Science may argue that the clutch gene is not a real thing. It's not something that you're born with. It's not something that certain people have. It's not in someone's DNA. The clutch gene is just made up. Sports tend to disagree. See, across all sports, we get these certain players that will just rise to the occasion consistently. These guys that make the biggest plays when the game is on the line. They're cool under pressure. They're calm and collected. They're not going to shrivel up, but instead they're going to play their best when it's needed. You find a few of those players across all sports, but they don't come around very often. See, in the NBA, we had a guy named Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was the definition of clutch when he played in the NBA. He had 6 finals appearances, and he won all 6 championships, coming away with 6 finals MVPs, hitting dagger after dagger after dagger in the playoffs. He never even played in a Game 7 in the finals. Michael Jordan was the definition of clutch. In the NFL, there are a few quarterbacks that are recognized as the greatest of all time. You have Peyton Manning up there. You have Tom Brady up there, and Marino. You get those interesting names. But there is one guy that consistently comes up clutch. And while Peyton Manning is extremely clutch, and right now he has the most comebacks of any quarterback in NFL history, and Tom Brady is also up there, there is one guy that's not usually recognized as the best quarterback in the NFL, even though he puts up the numbers to do that. Unfortunately, he hasn't been on a team that's successful enough to give him that kind of recognition. Matthew Stafford has been the king of the comeback ever since he has entered the NFL. It's not something that he just picked up recently. It's not something that Matthew Stafford's only done in the NFL. Stafford's been doing this since he was a quarterback in high school. Today, we're going to be looking at the story of the comeback king, the one and only Matthew Stafford. Now, let's take it back to the early years where the comeback king Matthew Stafford was born. Matthew Stafford was born in Tampa, Florida, where he played his high school ball at Highland Park in Dallas, Texas, with eventual pitcher Clayton Kershaw for the LA Dodgers. He was coached by Randy Allen. And what was different about Matthew Stafford from many other quarterbacks in high school is that usually at this high school, the next quarterback that took over was the junior waiting for the senior ahead of him to graduate. Well, in this case, that wasn't the case. Matthew Stafford took over as a starting varsity quarterback as a sophomore. His arm talent was undeniable, so they had to make that move to make him the starting quarterback early. And let me just say, it was the right decision. See, Matthew Stafford put up some ridiculous numbers as a first-year starter on the varsity team as a sophomore. Against great competition, played at 56.4% of his passes, 38 touchdowns to only 5 interceptions, and had 3,182 passing yards, and led his team to a 13-2 record, and eventually the Division I championship. So in the semifinals, Matthew Stafford wasn't just facing anybody. Matthew Stafford took on Graham Harrell. Now, Graham Harrell was not just some random quarterback in high school. Graham Harrell had the record with 167 career touchdowns. And you would think that, hey, you know what? This is his first year for Matthew Stafford. He's a very young player. He's only a sophomore in high school. He may shrivel up here. This could be a problem. But instead, something was different. Something was off about Matthew Stafford. Instead of shriveling up in the moment and becoming quiet and you kind of just forget about him, Matthew Stafford did the opposite. Matthew Stafford played arguably his best game of the season, having over 400 passing yards and leading his team to a 38-28 win in the semifinals. Then leading him into the finals, trailing 34-28 with 45 seconds left on the clock, Matthew Stafford rolled out, threw a touchdown in the end zone, and won the game. So there you go. The comeback king was born. In his first year starting as the varsity quarterback, Matthew Stafford already had a championship comeback form, won by 6 with only 45 seconds remaining. Matthew Stafford would throw a touchdown to Martin. After that game said, I really didn't get nervous in those situations. Matthew Stafford already knew he was the comeback king. Now, unfortunately, Matthew Stafford had a pretty rough junior season, and it definitely didn't go as planned. However, he wasn't just going to be okay with that. He then ended up working with a personal trainer and decided to make his commitment very early to eliminate all distractions so he could focus on his final year in high school. He decided to commit to Georgia over Michigan and Florida State. And in his final year, Matthew Stafford lived up to all of the hype. Matthew Stafford left a mark at his high school, finishing that senior season with a 15-0 record, winning the Division I championship once again, beating Ryan Mallett along the way, a quarterback that would eventually play for the Arkansas Razorbacks, having over 4,000 passing yards, being added to the Parade All-American team, the USA Preseason Super 25, and being named the MVP of the Elite 11 quarterback camp. Matthew Stafford balled out in his final year in high school, and that led him to being recognized as one of the top prospects coming out of high school. He was ranked nationally very high. He was ranked the number 1 pro-style quarterback, the number 2 player in Texas, the number 6 player in the nation, and he ranked as the 102nd best of all time. Now, that has obviously changed a little bit since then, most likely. However, at the time, 102nd, Matthew Stafford was getting tons of praise, and it was well deserved. The first quarterback to take over as a true freshman to start quarterback since the 1998 season for the Georgia Bulldogs. And once again, Matthew Stafford would prove that he is the comeback king in college and continue to add to his legacy. In 2006, he led the Georgia Bulldogs to a blowout win over number 5 Auburn. Then he led his team to a 15-12 win over his rival Georgia Tech, comeback fashion, and in a bowl game, led his team to a 31-24 comeback over Virginia Tech in the Chick-fil-A Bowl, where they trailed 21-3 at half. Down 18 points at half, they would come back and win that game. That is Matthew Stafford. I mean, that's just iconic Matthew Stafford. Then in 2007, his second season at Georgia, he beat every single rival they played that year. Florida, Auburn, and Georgia Tech for the first time since 1982. Matthew Stafford was all of a sudden making a name for himself in the college world, and many people believed he was going to be one of the top picks in the NFL draft. Mel Kiper, even in high school, predicted this would be the top pick in the NFL draft when he went into the NFL draft. In 2007, they would win the Sugar Bowl 41-10 over Hawaii. Yes, Hawaii was in the Sugar Bowl. I know it's crazy. Hawaii? I didn't believe it at first either, but it's okay. Then in 2008, his final year with Georgia, he would put up some ridiculous numbers. He put up 470 yards and 5 touchdowns against his rival this season in Georgia Tech. He also completed 235 passes on the season, which led the SEC. He had 3,959 passing yards that year, which was the second most in school history. 25 touchdowns, which was a single season record, which carried his team to a 9-3 final record, where they beat Michigan State in the bowl game. And that meant Matthew Stafford would go 3-0 in every single bowl game throughout his college career. Matthew Stafford put up an impressive college career with Georgia. But this was only the beginning. This was only the beginning of the comeback king, because in the NFL would go from being a strong arm, great quarterback to arguably the most clutch quarterback of all time. See, why a lot of people don't look at Matthew Stafford and recognize him as the top quarterback in the league. Matthew Stafford, by many people, however, is recognized as one of the most clutch players, rightfully so. His comeback numbers are off of the charts, and he's already broken multiple records, and he's not even done yet. Matthew Stafford in the NFL would take over an 0-16 team in 2009. Even though they were 0-16 the year before, he would lead his team to a comeback win, and only 2 wins that season. One of them would come in comeback fashion. And it is the game that most people recognize from Matthew Stafford, the young Stafford that made him popular, that made him famous. The Detroit Lions trailing, needing a touchdown to win the game. Stafford would roll out and fire a Hail Mary to the end zone, which unfortunately was incomplete, but the game was not over yet. Matthew Stafford took a big hit during that play, which basically knocked him out. However, there was a flag in the end zone, which led to a pass interference, which, because of the flag rules, the Detroit Lions would get the ball at the 1-yard line with 1 untimed down. Matthew Stafford laying on the sideline. It looked like the backup quarterback was ready to come in and take over because he would have to. However, the Browns made their biggest mistake. They decided to call a timeout. The Browns decided to burn a timeout defensively. And let me just say, at that moment, they knew they messed up, because Matthew Stafford said, hey, I can play right. Matthew Stafford knew the rules, knowing that, hey, they called a timeout, I can technically go back in the game. Even though coaches necessarily didn't advise it, holding his shoulder, run back onto the field. He would walk out in the goal line formation, run a play action pass to the back of the end zone, and throw an absolute dart and beat the Cleveland Browns. The Detroit Lions would only win 2 games that season, but this was the creation. This was a guy that had comeback victories in high school, college, and now the NFL. In his first season, already a comeback victory, but it would just start pouring on after that. Hopping over to 2011, where Matthew Stafford had a big win against the Dallas Cowboys. Matthew Stafford to Calvin Johnson was one of the greatest duos we've ever seen. Quarterback to wide receiver was one of the most entertaining duos of all time. Maybe the best athlete when it comes to just a pure wide receiver. I mean, one of the biggest guys with his size and speed, literally was unguardable when he was healthy. Strong gunslinger at quarterback. It was so fun to watch. And it led the Detroit Lions to many, many fun comebacks. I mean, they had so many comebacks against the Raiders, against the Dallas Cowboys, where they put up ridiculous numbers. Matthew Stafford just flinging it out there to Calvin Johnson. I mean, one of the most memorable moments is this just basic heave 50 yards away from the end zone and 3 defenders, and somehow Calvin Johnson finds a way to come down with the football. But in 2013, maybe the best comeback we've ever seen. Maybe the best last-minute drive of all time. Probably the most popular Lions play of all time. Detroit Lions have the ball. About a minute remaining, no timeouts. They need to go the length of the field, and they trail by 6. Even the announcers before this drive, if you watched the game back, said that this loss was going to hurt. Basically, they were assuming the Lions already lost the game. Don't tell that to the comeback king, a guy that was racking up comebacks on top of comebacks. And in 2013, Matthew Stafford had already been in a playoff appearance. He led his team to a playoff appearance in 2011, which was the first time since the 90s. Now, flash forward to 2013, where Matthew Stafford once again taking on the Dallas Cowboys. They already knew about what happened in 2011. They wanted to get some revenge. They didn't want to see the same thing happen. But unfortunately for the Dallas Cowboys, the same thing did happen. Stafford marched his team down the field with no timeouts, around a minute to go, and scored a touchdown. A pass to Calvin Johnson over middle, and then a bomb along the left side, along the bottom of the field to Chris Durham. That set up a nice pass to Calvin Johnson, which put the Detroit Lions on the 1-yard line. But quick thinking Matthew Stafford, who has the heart of a lion, ran up to the line of scrimmage, usually thinking that you would clock it, yelling clock it, thinking it's going to be a spike, got up to the line, seeing that everybody was flat-footed, not really paying attention because everybody assumed he was going to spike the football. Stafford decided to take it among himself, and even his own offensive lineman didn't know what was coming. Stafford took the snap, reached over the goal line, ran around into the end zone, and the Detroit Lions came up with one of the most impressive final drives of all time, one of the best moments in NFL history, and beat the Dallas Cowboys. The next season, in 2014, he would lead his team to an 11-5 record and to make the playoff once again. In 2016, Matthew Stafford would break the record for the most comebacks by any quarterback in a season, with 8. Break Peyton Manning's record. 8 comebacks in one season, where they only had 9 wins on the season. So nearly every single game that year was a comeback victory. Let's put up some incredible numbers late in games. But it's not all garbage stats, because even though people want to say that, it's already been debunked. It has put his name into the record books multiple times with his ability to stay cool and calm under pressure. Matthew Stafford has said many times that he feels kind of good with it, putting the ball in his hands. He likes having the ball in his hands, and we've seen this all the way back since high school. Matthew Stafford currently sits tied for 11th with the most quarterback comebacks of all time with 28. 5th in terms of current quarterbacks that are still in the league. That's the most comebacks of any quarterback since 2009, which is the year that he entered the league. Matthew Stafford could very easily end up being the quarterback with the most comebacks of all time when his career all said and done. And Stafford will be looked at as one of the most clutch players that we have ever seen across sports. And up to this date, Matthew Stafford, when the ball is in his hands and you're within reach, you know there's a chance. You just know there is a chance that Matthew Stafford can pull out some of that magic and pull off a win. It's happened time and time and time again. And it hurts opponents, it makes Lions fans happy, but it is one of the most incredible things you'll witness. Matthew Stafford, the king of the comeback, and he's only 32 years old. Let me know your thoughts, comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.